Question I would like to investigate in my dissertation is how are transnational co-productions between local studios and streaming services changing the landscape of reality TV, and what are the implications in regard to their portrayal of gender? More specifically, I'm going to look at how is femininity constructed and experienced on the Japanese Netflix show Terrace House. I will address it in two parts. Firstly, how transnational Netflix shows such as Terrace House create national gender identities and what may be gained from their globalization. This involves discussing the role of the relationship between the local and the global in the construction of Japanese female identity, and the power and influence of modernization, particularly social media engagement, on the experience of this construction. Secondly, I'm going to address the more problematic aspects of the globalization of international reality TV shows. I will discuss the commodification and fetishization of Japanese culture and particularly Japanese women, and how the seemingly progressive Terrace House perpetuates these issues. The downsides of social media engagement, as well as the dangers of Netflix's targeted algorithm in targeting audiences through their viewing history that may already have a predisposition to do this. Fabian Darling Wolf explores the way a national identity is created through its carefully mediated relationship to the global. To support his argument, Darling Wolf performs a case study of the French reality TV show Star Academy. Wolf details the way in which Star Academy creates a strong national French identity by using a multi-generational, diverse cast that is united by a common culture, a stronger unifier than race, ethnicity, or age. When it comes to gender identity, Darling Wolf describes how, unlike Star Academy's Arab version, which had massive controversy surrounding its portrayal of women, the relative lack of discourse around the French Star Academy firmly establishes France in what Darling Wolf describes as the posts: post-feminist, post-colonial, post-modern, etc. Darling Wolf asserts that France was able to do this by strategically positioning themselves as the leader of an imagined francophone community that excludes much of the French-speaking world, thereby serving to erase part of their colonial history. This is interesting to consider in relationship to Terrace House's portrayal of Japan, which has its own imperial history. Terrace House attempts to portray Japan, and particularly Japanese women, as being progressively aligned with Western ideals, perhaps in an attempt to set Japan apart from its eastern neighbors. It is also interesting to note one of the series is set in Hawaii, a place symbolic of Japan's turbid history with the West. The reason I focused on Darling Wolf's work is because the global Netflix backdrop is important to the construction of the Japanese identity on Terrace House. The second source I'm going to discuss is Xavier Lahori's article, Love Island, Social Media and Surveillance, New Pathways of Challenging Realism in Reality TV. Lahori uses fan interactions with Love Island to show how reality TV fans are using surveillance and lateral surveillance to interrogate the constructed identities of the islanders and to hold producers accountable for perceived injustices. Lahori's work is pertinent to Terrace House because as the Terrace House members are allowed to keep their phones and interact with fan communities, their performed personalities and gender identities are being created discursively through these interactions. For example, Soto Tsutsubas mentions how she attempted to appear more feminine due to the criticism she received on Instagram. In addition, as Terrace House's audiences spread out across the globe, social media is the most immediate place to observe how audiences experience the show. Furthermore, it was fans on social media that held Fujifilm accountable for the death of one of the Terrace House members. This resulted in the cancellation of the show. Next, I'm looking at the portrayal of Japanese women in popular television. Ito Mamoru, in her essay, The Representation of Femininity in Japanese Television Dramas in the 1990s, focuses her analysis on trendy dramas, or J-dramas as they are known internationally. Mamoru describes how these dramas, the results of Japan's growth and modernization, attempted to present an image of a new woman, one that was career-driven and liberated from traditional gender norms. However, Mamoru argues while on the surface this contemporary female archetype appears to subvert older gender stereotypes, it was created symbiotically with traditional gender norms. Similarly, Terrace House, as a result of further Japanese cultural globalization modernization, also attempts to present a revolutionary new conception of female identity, but succumbs to the same obstacles as the trendy dramas described by Mamoru. The archetype described by Mamoru, despite being confident and assertive at the outset, becomes submissive and feminine at the end of the dramas. Laura Miller discusses how the Cool Japan ideology enforces and utilizes this feminine, also cute stereotype to promote geek culture and gender stratification in Japan and across the globe. Miller argues that the cute girl image imported through Cool Japan is not apolitical and is tied to conservative models of gender and culture. Many otaku fans give pardons to the sexist and often creepy depictions of women by claiming it's just a fantasy, but this can be worrisome when these portrayals are passed off as real. Unfortunately, some of the depictions of the female cast members of Terrace House, in an attempt I believe to be sex positive and progressive, fall into the aforementioned categories of sexist and creepy. This becomes dangerous because of the way the show is construed as reality, and less discerning audiences may believe this is so. Further, Netflix and other computer algorithms that are based on previous searches and viewer history may inadvertently pander to those involved in toxic forms of otaku culture. Netflix's recommendation system theoretically results in a closed commercial loop in which culture conforms to more than it confronts its users. Due to Terrace House's and otaku's culture's overlapping Japanese origin, it is not out of the realm of possibility that Netflix's algorithm would integrate Terrace House within a toxic echo chamber of a problematic interpretation of otaku culture. While there is plenty of research done on the construction of national identities on reality TV, I was unable to find any that dealt specifically with transnational co-productions. In addition, there is very little scholarly work on the show Terrace House, and none that deals with gender, so this is what I will be adding to existing research.